All right. So, question. I guess I'll start all the way back. Why did you become a writer?
Oh, wow.
Or how?
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have a moment where I realized. It feels to me like I just always knew that was what I wanted to do. I can tell you, I found I'm a poet, and I found it's a funny story. I found poetry when I was probably like 16.
Mm-hmm.
I had a what would that have been, 11th grade class, where the teacher, her brother was a publishing poet or something, and so at the end of the quarter, she would have us, everyone bring in a poem, we'll just spend a day reading around the room, and so I went looking, and my family, we didn't have poetry around, but we had old books, and so I found this Ralph Waldo Emerson poem that was called Brahma, that was really mysterious and beautiful. And I read that, and I was like, it sort of took my head off. And that same week, this is so ironic, the same week, MTV Unplugged used to do a thing, it used to be a show, and they ran poetry slammers from New York one week, and I saw it that same week, and I had never seen anything like that before, and I was already like really switched on because of this Emerson poem. And both of those the same week, I was like, oh, this is something that I had thought about, like songwriting and the way kids do, but all the, I want to write somehow, but and then all of a sudden both of these converged, and I was like, that's what I want, that's what my life is going to be, and it really, cool. I never kind of like stopped thinking that,
That's very cool. So you do have a moment.
I guess, yeah.
Moment, but it's kind of
the centering moment in this otherwise cloud,
Yeah, that's very interesting. And then maybe more about how you became a professor, like your educational history.
So I have always been an English literature and writing person. That's all of my degrees and stuff like that. I went to college at a little private school in Ohio called Wittenberg, which had a real good humanities programs and stuff like that. Really fell in love with the community aspects of it, and education. My idea of what education is really formed there, which was really communal and small classes, discussion based, the kind of thing where you take the conversation home with you. We'd be sitting around at somebody's house in the evening, still talking about something that happened earlier in class. Like it was just like a lifestyle instead of like a thing we were doing, and that's still the way I think about these things. Did my master's at UC Davis, which was a good place, but it was in transition at the time, and it was different than I expected it to be, and so I had a little mixed feeling about that. But my PhD in Houston was awesome, and I loved everything about that program. Again, it was big and communal, and again, it was like a lifestyle. That's maybe that's the key with me with being a professor and being in education, is that like I almost don't even associate my paychecks with the work I do, because this just feels like the life I'm living, and then I get paid sometimes. So it's everything is this. Yeah, it's not a bad way to live. But yeah, professor always seemed like the easiest way or the most direct way for me to just live the kind of life that I've always wanted to live. I mean, I get to go into a room and talk about stories and poems that I love, and try to figure out why they're great, and like that's my job. Like that's terrific. So.
Oh, yeah. Good. So connecting to that, what do you like about teaching? So you said that you like talking about great literature.
Oh yeah. There's a funny sort of, I don't know if it's not exactly selfish, but there's something really funny about, or really great about, being able to have a room full of students that have never seen something amazing, and then bringing that to them, because I feel like that's creative writing classes to some degree are about switching a light on for people. Like my idea of what my role is to, in some ways, my role is to, I hate to say inspire, that's not exactly what I mean, but what I want to do is to create a world in which my students are more interested in this topic than they were when they began, such that even if I never have them in class again, if I bump into them in 10 years, they may still be reading, they may still be writing. Like that's exciting to me. And so a lot of what I do as far as exercises, the way we talk about literature, the conversations we have, it's not all pep talks and love, but there is something exciting about about lighting a fire, and that I think maybe that's the thing I like best about teaching.
Mm-hmm. I haven't done this in a long time.
Sorry.
Such quick I'm not bad at it. I'm impressed with myself. Good. What are your first impressions here at Grand Valley about your students, the class, campus?
I feel very at home here.
Mm-hmm.
This is it's such an interesting like combination of the things that I have been through otherwise. So like I went to a very small college, and then I went to graduate school at these huge R1 schools, and also taught there at those places. And this is like it's a great big school that is with small classes and where people know each other, and it's in this small town. It feels intimate here. So it's kind of like I like the way that it feels like this amalgamation of this combination of the things that I've liked before. Like I think it'd be hard for me to go. I taught for 1 year at a school that was about 700 students, and it was very small, and it was very. It wasn't exactly constricting, but it kind of was. And as I prefer a bigger school, but then I get to a bigger school, and I'm like, I wish this was more intimate. So I feel like this has a really good sort of balance of the two things I like about a campus.
How about your students? Like, are they similar, different? How are they different?
Yeah. So the students here, in some ways, college students are college students, and I find that Houston, Santa Cruz, Allendale, like there's something like there's something familiar about all of this, and that's kind of nice in a way. It's actually there's something really nice about that. It's a nice little sociological thing to notice. But specifically about here, I think one of the things that I notice is that I guess I had forgotten this. I am a Great Lakes Midwest kid, and there is a friendliness and a willingness to go with it, in a sense that it's not that I didn't have that in California or in Texas, but it's really a defining characteristic. It seems to me here in Michigan or in Grand Valley or in
Ohio.
or in the area or whatever. Yeah, it's a very friendly place, and that's not every place is like that. That's nice.
Can you tell me a bit more about like what kind of things you do in your classes?
Sure. In my classes are very writing heavy. My creative writing courses, which I guess seems like, of course, they would be, but we write a lot in class. My intro class, my 219 classes, are I think of them as like productive, or there's a word I sometimes use for that. I can't remember how I've talked about this before, but my goal is I want the students to come out they do some revision. We read quite a bit actually of good stories and poems, but my goal, I want them to come out with a stack of new work. I want them to come out with, like, I think that writing a lot is the secret to, is one of the secrets to writing well, is making the process, again, maybe it's my personal thing about a lifestyle, but making the process a lifestyle. So my students write very frequently, write in class. There are assignments outside of class. There are major projects. There are small experimental things that are destined to fail for half the room, but half the room they will work for, and low risk things, and then major projects. So the way it works for me is that they wind up producing just a great deal of new work, to the extent that when they get done with it, when I give them their portfolio back, my suspicion is they will have forgotten some of the things they did at the beginning by the end, because so much will have happened since then. And I kind of like that too. It makes the thing kind of still alive to them. So I appreciate that. We do some revision too, but I feel like that's more of an advanced prospect. I want them to write. That revising to me is like working over developing the voice you're trying to cultivate, and challenging it as well as developing it. And for intro students, I generally feel like, well, you gotta figure out what voice means first. Yeah, yeah. Let's get you some material that then you can polish later. So we write a lot for that reason.
And now about your own writing.
Sure.
So, what kind of things do you write?
Yeah. So I'm a poet mostly, some nonfiction as well. I have, the older I get, the more I think in major projects. So I used to, once upon a time, I would just write poems occasionally, and now if I start to fall into an idea, it becomes a book project really fast instead of just a bunch of individual things. You know, my book is over here.
Can I see?
Yeah, sure. It is a very self-contained single thing, and it's so self-contained that I didn't give the individual pieces titles because it's in 5 sections and they have titles, but it really reads straight through, and that was intentional. It's in dialogue with itself. It's really it's a book as opposed to a collection of things.
Oh, I see.
And I think that, you know, as a project, that's the way I think about these things. My other ones, my chapbooks too, are like that too.
So you have written. So what? I don't want to call this poetry collection.
Yeah.
What do you want to call this?
Oh, this is a poetry
book
collection.
of poetry,
Yeah,
or poetry collection.
Yeah, either one, and then the 2 I have these guys as well. They're just little chapbooks that are collections too.
Actually, one version of the story.
Yeah.
Just look at the title.
Yeah, for sure. 17? I went on the books were in 17, so maybe 16. But it's newish. I'd say about my own work too. For me, I think the work, and this is not everybody's burden, but for me, I think the work of the writer is to explore, to discover something, and so trying to, instead of trying to just express or trying to depict things, I find myself thinking there's usually a problem or just like a little I don't know, like a little, almost like the way that a little grain of sand becomes the pearl because it irritates the clam. I feel like there's usually a little grain of sand somewhere, and the work of the writing or of the book is to try to explore that as deeply as possible, to try to figure out, why does this matter? What is this? What does it mean, and why does it matter? And that's partly why they turn into these large projects. It's because it's not really a thing you can do in a page and a half. It's a thing you do in 75 pages. But it also means that if I start a project, I never really know where it's going to go because the exploration is the thing. You know?
I really like the pearl thing, but I left it out right now because I'm like, so I try to find a little grain of sand and explore it, what it means and why does it matter. Should we say grain of sand, similar to the grain of sand?
Yeah, it becomes the pearl. There you go.
It was just so nice.
Thanks.
Clearly you're a poet there.
Thanks.
Okay. And like any new projects you're working on or something in progress?
I have a project that I always say I'm working on it, but I've been at it for a long time and I'm not sure. But I was working with the Book of Psalms.
Okay.
And once upon a time, what I was trying to do, which I'm not sure I'm doing this anymore, was I was trying to recast them in the way that you could say, like Romeo and Juliet was recast in West Side Story. Like it's the same story, but it has been transferred into a different context. And the Odyssey is plenty of versions of it where people put the Odyssey in another context. So I thought that's an interesting project, and the Psalms are kind of the earliest lyric poems that we have. I thought that's a thing I almost never see someone working with the actual line by line, and they're not narrative, so it's hard to recast them.
Yeah.
So I've published a couple of these. I was originally, it was going to be a great big project, and I was trying to figure out what am I, beyond the mechanics, what am I doing with it, and it's been I don't know, it's been a project. So I'm working with the Book of Psalms, we can just say that.
So currently working with the Book of Psalms, trying to recast them
into other, into new context or into other foreign context, whatever. It's been tricky. It's been tricky. It's very labor intensive, and that's part of the reason why I'm not getting very far with it.
Yeah, because you don't just start with yourself or the idea that's not on the page, but you
and because it's not narrative, I can't just say, this character will turn over like this. So you have to find your way to the heart of the thing and then figure out what to do with it. So it's line by line. It's a very labor intensive. So we'll see if it might just become a whole different project eventually.
So. And finally, what kind of advice do you give your student writers if they are aspiring writers?
There's sort of the literal advice, the mechanics of this thing, which is, I always tell people, the thing that I think young writers often miss is it really matters that you're reading and like what you're reading, and like that you will write more and also better if you've just got a constant sort of flow of work that you're reading. Is that matters. I tell them that kind of thing. That's my biggest piece of advice for young writers. But also, again, just to repeat from earlier, like one of the things that I tell people in a less mechanical and more sort of theoretical sense is like, I don't think this is something that you do. I think it's something that you kind of like are, and anyone can be a writer, but it has to be just part of your life. It can't be like a vacation from your. I mean, it's perfectly fine if you. I mean, everyone should have arts that they do, but if you're thinking I might want to like pursue this for my life, then make it a part of your life. Like make it a thing that is not. It shouldn't feel like a vacation from your life. It should feel like part of what you do and what you are, and like. Which is, that sounds probably more aggressive than I even mean it. I think people don't. It's often the people who make it, so to speak, in the arts. I don't think they're necessarily always the most talented ones. They're the ones who are most tenacious. They're the hardest working. They're also the ones who buy into this. This is going to be a thing that takes me years to develop, and I'm okay with. Like they don't get down on it. They don't get bored with it. They're the people who are checked in, who say, okay, this is now what I'm doing. This is who I am now. And I think that matters. I think that matters a lot.
Sounds great. Anything else you would like to add?
I hadn't actually thought about it, so I don't think I have anything.
Sorry,
No, it's all right. It's all right.
No,
this is great. This is great. Like I don't think I have anything to add unless there's any other questions.
Yeah, and these are like this, these are like shorter pieces, like a picture and a
That's
page.
Great. Yeah, sure.
So I will distill it to something. I'll give it to a student writer.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. This has been great.